the meantime, the struggle for positions in the National Assembly is becoming more intense, both at the red and the green chambers. With this power struggle just before the beginning of parliamentary session, which may polarize the parliament, some are recommending that power sharing in the National Assembly be enshrined in the Constitution to improve inclusion and also stabilize political order in the country. What are the advantages and disadvantages of institutionalizing power sharing in Nigeria?
Well, Dr. Sam Amadi, our Rise News analyst, he joins us in the studio now to try and provide some answers. Dr. Amadi, thank you so much for being here. Well, we've seen all of the arguments, different geopolitical zones for one reason or another, believing, you know what, we actually deserve to either produce the next Senate president or even the Speaker of the House of Reps, or even, of course, the presiding officer's position. All those are, you know, have been in the public space. So I ask you directly, some are clamoring for zoning to be enshrined in our constitution. What are some of the advantages and also the drawbacks if, you know, we decide to go in this direction, so that way we forget about all these arguments whenever we come to a new political era?
Sure. Enshrining in the constitution makes it more orderly, predictable, so you know that in this electoral cycle, this power goes to A or B. So it kind of freezes discussions and debates over who gets what. And so we think that in a chaotic traditional democracy, maybe what they call power sharing in political science, they talk about constitutionalism, meaning a system of government where there are different levels or sharing of power in a way that you can actually talk about multiple government. Abacha constitution, which was voided when he was overthrown, and I think Justice Nikitobe led the process, and the council did that constitution tried to predict like a 40-year plan, 30-year plan for every zone in this country to hold the presidency. In fact, it prescribed multiple presidency, multiple vice presidency, so that each zone at every time has position in the presidency, up to sharing of power down. So the argument has been that for poorer societies that are kind of affected by deep cleavages and that are prone to where you need to create more social trust, stabilize politics, such constitutionalization of power sharing would reduce friction. Now the downside is oftentimes the dynamics of responding to things as they develop. So for example, assuming the constitutional text says the Senate president should go to, let's say, Southeast, okay? And then the dynamics of politics maybe suggest that certain things have happened and you need to compensate. So you're going to trade off certainty for the dialectics and the dynamics of response to political development. So some people can argue that maybe we should keep it as those arrangements, some concession, some convention that power will be shared, but not kind of institutionalize them in text, constitutional text that will require, very rigorous process of amendment. But the key point is that elite consensus around the need to share power and some self-constraint in terms of triumphalism. You have people say, well, we have the numbers, we can always get what we want. And that's the real problem of stabilizing democracy in a poorer society with deep cleavages. It requires a sense of deference to others, self-restraint, so that the tyranny of numerical majority is as bad as the tyranny of powerful minority. So in a democracy, you don't have it all because you have the numbers. In a democracy, the social justice is the core criterion for democratic stability. The sense that people feel they belong to the society and they have equal shares. And so the dynamics of how to make that social trust, social justice, some can argue should be left somewhat flexible so that you can deal with issues arising. But the danger, and this started from 1958 with the Wilkins Commission, well, the idea before we get to idea of give back to Nigeria. The trouble was, how do you manage the concerns of minorities in the north and the south? That's really, someone can argue that Nigeria came out of a concern around modernization. Nigerian constitutional order is built around the quest for a framework that will make people have a sense of belonging. That's why I had the fundamental human rights, we have organizations and all.
Well, Dr. Sam, even this discourse is not new, because even in the 1994-1995 National Constitutional Conference here in Abuja also still talked about it. And before to ask the next question, well, some breaking news just getting to us here on Arise News. Well, earlier on, we had announced, of course, the fact that the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja that was shut down earlier in the day because of that crash-landing incident of a MAX airplane from Yola, Adamawa State into Abuja actually caused the authorities to shut down the airport. But of course, news getting to us now, cheering news you must add, is the fact that the airport has now been reopened for business, be it local or international flights, all will resume. You know, that counters the earlier reports that we had garnered, where you know, some airline operators were told that the airport will be shut till about 6:20 p.m. tomorrow. But now, the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, breaking news just getting to us is that it's been reopened for business.
Right. Now, Dr. Sam, it's interesting looking at power sharing, especially in a place like Nigeria. I thought you were also going to mention integrationism when it comes to our specific situation in Nigeria, which looks like integrationism works better for us. When we talk about power sharing, two things come to mind immediately. The usefulness, all right, the utility, and the desirability. You've not really told us, all right, why it's desirable in a place like Nigeria, and of course its utility, and of course why we should embrace integrationism or some other kind of power sharing.
The integration and power sharing are not opposed to each other. You know, the notion of integration, one country, as a matter of being colorblind in the US or being, you know, don't think about difference, has failed. And that's part of what you look at across Africa. You see the return of ethnicity and the return of tribal politics. What is realistic now is that we will become, instead of becoming a melting pot, people say we should be like a garden, different fruits, different trees, you know, coming together. And it's a garden, or like the park, the image used by scholars is the park. If you go to developed societies, the park, you see people are eating, some people are doing sports, some people are hanging out. So different people come, but they're all governed by that sense of harmony. So what you try to do with national integration is to create a sense in which people of diverse identities, whether cultural or religious or ethnic, have common commitment to a country, are integrated in the pursuit of the Nigerian state and what it represents in the constitution. But at the same time, they have a sense that they are allowed to be themselves. They're also allowed to partake in the governance. That's a critical thing. So integration is the goal, but methodology to that goal is a sense of inclusion, which power sharing gives you. So what does it mean to be integrated as a country? It means that all of us have one Nigeria, all of us have commitment to those social order in our constitution, in chapter 2, chapter 4. But then we all come there with a sense of entitlement. Okay, fine, this is the Nigerian government desk. This is my own personal president. This is your own person. So, end of the day, the question is, do you want to respond using public office to respond to contending and conflicting dynamics of existence, ethnicity, religion? For example, we have a Muslim president, okay, assuming. Then you could say, okay, fine, let's look at the corridor and see what opens up. So part of APC government's argument, and very good one, is that look, we need someone for the South, which will most likely be a Christian South as Senate president. So with that, you are still building towards integration, but you're now making it more feasible. Now that's the issue of disability. You decide because our recent history has been a history of increased division, a history of sometimes unreasonable exclusion. And so if you want to construct after a pandemic, you have to factor what the pandemic has done. People now say, okay, look, we've suffered a lot. 8 years we've been struggling over identity, or we're included, excluded. Now we have an opportunity to start afresh. We need to now reconstruct and integrate ourselves into that conversation. So people talk about power sharing. It's not undemocratic. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's not anti-integration. It's actually pro-integration. You are saying that give people incentive and reason to continue to affirm that common identity and common commitment, the common good.
That we share.
So don't give an opportunity, don't give them incentive to rethink what are the country values? And that's why I gave an example from 1968, 1960. By 58, we were talking about, the question was, how do we ensure that the minorities do not fear so much about domination? And we said, first, fundamental human rights. Second, we said, give them legislative position. Third, we say special development interventions for the Delta. These are all came out of that process. And after the war, we talked about the 3 R's: rehabilitation, reintegration, and so the notion has always been that the Nigerian state is a viable proposition as long as social justice is at the heart of it. And that social justice is dynamic in response to the situation. So if, for example, we've seen 5 presidents who are Southerners, it now starts to sense, for example, that you have to think around how do we ensure that a Northerner comes in, as an example. Or if suddenly we've seen that all the defense chiefs are from one zone, whatever it is, then somebody can say, look, affirmative action, let's deal with, as long as it's a conscious topical issue for people. I mean, in many countries in the world, people argue that if you create enough economic goods, the economy grows, people are happy, middle class flourish, maybe, and then you have a professionalized civil service where projects are not donated around based on ethnicity or identity. So, for example, if you need to, if it's a flood in Imo State, you intervene to save life. If it's another flood,
irrespective of the
of ethnic or
right.
Okay. So once you come to that point, then people, you see, it's a socialization. People rethink and tune away from identity and focus on merit based. So I think yes, that if you continue to have decent, responsible, accountable, and prosperous governance, where people see that look, the pie is enlarging, I don't need to struggle.
Decent,
especially if it's
responsible,
already
accountable,
in law
prosperous.
that says, it's clearly written that, what, this zone gets...
So you pull back from the click.
So your recommendations, decent, responsible, accountable, prosperous government.
And competence as well.
Competence. Dilute our attachment
well,
to this and therefore perhaps we will not be sharing again. Time will come when Nigerians will vote for anybody, president, vice,
irrespective
for
of
that
where
time.
you're from.
For one zone.
Well,
Thank you
so
very
then,
much.
I feel that when issues of power rotation is something that
pragmatic
always
and
comes up.
realistic,
Issue
absolutely.
of power rotation always comes up with every assembly.
And don't forget,
even in the
if
last
it's not
one.
constitutional, it should be elite consensus so that they can always...
But anything not written in law.
Like a gentleman's agreement.
Gentleman's agreement. How many times have we seen that being broken, really, at the end of the
But if
day?
you watch APC, they move towards zoning to the south. They came out and say it should
Well,
go south.
until it's south, but not south or southeast.
Yes, but that's
there we go.
The president-elect has not been very
Dr.
definite about
Amadi,
that. Yeah.
a good place to leave this. Because there was a bill to provide for rotation in the last
Yes,
night
there
assembly.
was.
But he suffered a setback in the second reading.
And
So until it's in law.
The best framework, 30 years guarantee for everybody, and multiple vice presidency. So maybe that's even the way to go. It happened many countries in the world. Switzerland, they have this.
Yeah.
Okay.
This
Dr. Amadi, this is an ongoing conversation. Of course, we cannot exhaust everything today, but we'll say for in-depth analysis tonight. Thank you.